Hello and welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines in the southeast. 4 men who murdered a student at a New Year's Eve party in Brighton are sentenced to a total of 86 years. Bill Henham's family say he was denied the chance to make his mark.
We are so angry for what these men did and grateful for the justice they will receive. Sadly, however, no sentence will give us Bill back.
A witness appeal after thugs leave a pregnant horse dying in a break-in at a stables near Rye.
Also this Friday evening, concern about computer games with loot boxes. Harmless fun or a gateway to gambling addiction?
And do you love them or loathe them? Well, it seems the younger generation are driving a great gnome revival. Good evening. 4 men have been jailed for life following the murder of a young man from West Sussex at a party on New Year's Eve in Brighton.
24-year-old Bill Henham from Henfield was beaten unconscious before being thrown off the balcony of a disused building 2 years ago.
Well, outside court, Bill's family said he was denied the chance to make his mark on the world and no sentence could ever bring him back. Andy Dickinson has our report.
This CCTV shows the last recorded sighting of Billy Henham before he was murdered at a New Year's Eve party in Brighton 2 years ago. The 24-year-old student was beaten unconscious in a squat, punched, kicked and stamped, then stripped and dropped over a fence. He told his family he was hoping to experience New Year in a city's lively atmosphere. Today they spoke of their grief after 4 men were sentenced to a total of 86 years for his murder.
We are so angry for what these men did and grateful for the justice they will receive. Sadly, however, no sentence will give us Bill back, and more importantly, it won't give him the chance to make his mark on the world and follow his dreams in a way that we all strive to do. Over time, our memories will likely dim and we will forget some of the things he said to us and some of the things he did. But we will never forget how he made us feel.
29-year-old Gregory Hawley and 28-year-old Duchesne Meikle refused to attend court this morning. Elise Spence was 16 at the time of the murder, Lamesh Gordon Carew 18. The court heard their attack was brutal and savage, their victim suffering a total of 80 injuries, including 11 broken ribs, that he was vulnerable and an easy target due to his level of intoxication, and that they enjoyed the violence, boasting and taking trophy photos of him naked.
It's senseless and horrific. It's an absolute tragedy. Bill's death served no purpose. He was a kind and gentle young man with so much promise. There are no words for how appalling this crime is.
In a highly emotional statement to the court, Mr. Henham's family spoke of their heartbreak, horror and despair. Only time will tell how much normality in our lives we will regain, they said. This verdict cannot assuage our grief or loss, which is unfathomable. And to the murderers, your joint act of brutality stole our son. For the past 2.5 years, these parents have existed, not lived, the judge added. He said none of the murderers had expressed any remorse. Hawley and Meikle both sentenced to life with a minimum of 25 years. Gordon Carew and Spence a minimum of 18 years. Andy Dickinson, ITV News, Hove.
In other news tonight, the number of migrants deported to Rwanda is more likely to be in the hundreds than thousands each year. That's according to the Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab, who said he wanted to manage expectations. In April, the government announced plans to send some cross-channel migrants to Africa to break the business model of people smuggling gangs. So far this year, 8,000 people have reached Kent and Sussex in small boats.
Dozens of people have been arrested and thousands of wraps of drugs have been seized in a major crackdown on county lines drug dealing in Brighton. Since September, 9 weapons, including knives, machetes and fake guns, have been taken off the streets. It's part of Operation Extreme, which aims to safeguard victims and make the city safer.
A hospital for people with complex mental health needs in Canterbury has been rated inadequate by the Care Quality Commission. Inspectors visited Cedar House in Barnham in January and found the wards were unclean and in a state of disrepair, which made them unsafe. Staff did not plan onward accommodation, leaving one patient at the hospital for more than 10 years. The site will be closely monitored and re-inspected within 6 months. Covebury Limited, which manages the site, says a new team has now been put in place to make improvements.
A heavily pregnant horse has been found dead in a field in East Sussex. The owner says she's devastated. The horse had suffered serious injuries, including a broken leg.
Well, Sussex Police are investigating and want to hear from anyone with information or dashcam footage. Charlotte Wilkins has our report.
This was the field that my 3 jumping mares were in. Both gates had been opened and both water troughs had been turned off.
Early on Monday morning, Lauren Sapstead received a call to say the horses she cares for at St Francis Field in Northiam were on the loose. She raced to the stables and once they'd rounded up the animals, they realised that one, called Alice, was missing. After a frantic search, Lauren's 7-year-old daughter made a devastating discovery.
My daughter started screaming, "Mummy, mummy, mummy." And I said, "What's wrong, what's wrong?" Anyway, she couldn't even say, so I just ran and then came round the corner and Alice was there with about 6 inches of bone sticking out of her leg, obviously dead. She obviously struggled a lot and there was a fair bit of blood and she dug a hole and she's obviously gone into labour because stress will have made her, obviously.
Lauren fears the horse, which was heavily pregnant, was attacked deliberately.
The fact that her head collar and lead rope's been taken, the other ones they've ditched in the field, but her head collar and lead rope's totally gone, so they've obviously taken that with them.
Alice was a former show jumper, then a breed mare, but much more than that. The much-loved, gentle horse was part of Lauren's family.
I went up every day and we had cuddles and she was the sweetest, kindest mare and the only horse on the site that would have let anyone anywhere near her. So, yeah, just heartbreaking and, you know, so intentionally they've hidden her around the corner and, you know, she's been left there to suffer. I'd rather she was stolen than... Sorry.
Charlotte Wilkins, ITV News, Northiam.
Now let's turn our attention to more positive news this evening because a former Sheppey United footballer says Jake Daniels' decision to come out as gay will be inspirational for the next generation of players in the LGBTQ+ community.
After coming out as bisexual to his teammates last year, Jamal Howlett-Mundell says he felt very proud when he heard the news, as a teenager has become the first male professional footballer to come out since Justin Fashanu back in 1990.
But Jamal admits there's a long way to go towards making football a truly inclusive sport. He's been in conversation with Joe Caution, reflecting on his first season since sharing his sexuality.
I feel like I'm ready to tell people about my story. I want people to know the real me, and lying all the time isn't what I've wanted to do.
Jamal couldn't help but feel a sense of pride watching Jake Daniels come out as gay to the world. That's because he can relate to his relief. Almost a year ago, he took the similar decision to share his sexuality with his teammates at Sheppey United.
In my own personal circumstances, there was a mixture of excitement and anxiety. You know, I've always been someone that suffered quite deeply with low moods, and I've had a lot of depressive episodes in the past due to my sexuality. But the more I opened up and each step that I took, I just found that, okay, I'm being me. So he's now become the person that people are going to look at, and whether that's a pressure that he would like to take on or not, it is going to happen, you know. And again, being at such a young age as well, he's now allowed other people to see that regardless of their age, regardless of their sexuality, you can go and be a professional footballer, and to right.
And it's not just breaking down barriers off the field. Sheppey have broken plenty of records on the pitch too, completing what Liverpool are dreaming of, the elusive quadruple, winning 4 trophies. But the glory didn't come without its challenges for Jamal. Twice this season, he says he was the target of homophobic abuse.
I felt like I took a step back. You know, I really felt like I withdrew for a while, and it made me really start to question myself, you know, and I was like, that's not fair. Like, why should I have to suffer this because I'm playing football and I'm bisexual? So what, you know, like, I'm playing football, that's it.
I loved Jake's answer to this about the potential of facing abuse from supporters and how he's prepared himself for that. And I loved his attitude. He just said, well, I'm being paid to play football, say what you like. Yeah. You know, you're paying to watch me play.
Right.
Great attitude to have,
Right.
But I wonder whether you have that same protection in the lower leagues and whether that's a concern.
It used to be a massive concern, but I think I'm now at a point where if it did ever come to that point, which I hope it doesn't, like, I can defend myself, you know, but there's still people like myself that are not professionals, you know, and just because we're not professionals, it doesn't mean we don't have feelings. It doesn't mean that we aren't still going out and competing 11 against 11 and could still face that type of abuse, you know, so that's also something that I do believe could be looked at.
There's still a long way to go then to make the sport more inclusive, but Jamal hopes with role models like Jake, football will keep up. Joe Caution, ITV News.
Well, you can watch the full extended interview with Jamal and Joe, more keeping up, as I would imagine, as part of our In Conversation series over on our website. The address, as ever, itv.com/Meridian.
You're watching ITV News in the Meridian region. Coming up.
A woman from Canterbury, born with a condition affecting her face, describes her experience as she walks around town as a campaign launches called Stop the Stare.
I do know that when someone stares at me, it's a really icy, hostile experience.
And also on the way, could the garden gnome be about to make a comeback? Well, for more on all of our stories, you know where to go, itv.com/Meridian. You can call us, the number 0808 1010 095. And remember, you can also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter.
The government is coming under increasing pressure to put tougher restrictions on so-called loot boxes in computer games. Some claim it's a form of gambling which is easily accessible for under 18s.
Well, loot boxes offer random items or upgrades within games and can be bought with real money. And a recent report suggests hundreds of thousands of children already show addictive behaviours towards them, some spending in excess of £500, as Nick Smith explains.
For young fans of computer games, it's a hobby which doesn't come cheap, especially with more and more potential to spend real money in virtual worlds. Rowan Bullen is a young gamer from our region. He will use his own money in games for upgrades, but his spending is closely monitored by his mum.
You can have fun working your way through the levels and stuff and getting better all by yourself. But a little boost can really help you.
Everything we play is monitored by myself and my partner. He can't make any in-game purchases without our consent. And it's his money. If he earns that money, he has the right to spend it however he sees fit.
One form of in-game purchasing which has come under a lot of scrutiny is loot boxes, with a House of Lords committee declaring them to be a gateway to gambling. Loot boxes are a feature of computer games which have emerged in the last decade or so. Sometimes gamers want to buy upgrades to their experience, like new characters or fancy items. However, rather than just a normal in-game purchase, the way loot boxes work is that a gamer will pay to open the box without knowing what's inside. It could be that item you really wanted, or it could be something you didn't. It's led some to claim that this is a game of chance and therefore a form of gambling. Jonathan Pinnickett says he has first-hand experience of how addictive they can be.
By chasing the buzz and the rush of luck that loot boxes give you, my spending went completely out of control and I ended up spending nearly £3,000. Loot boxes aren't currently regulated as gambling on a technicality that the items don't hold financial rewards. But I think it's really important not to underestimate that situation when a parent finds out all of a sudden that one of their kids has spent thousands of pounds that they may not be able to afford on a video game.
Jonathan helped lead a survey of 1,800 children, with a third saying they'd purchased loot boxes in one form or another. One of the academics analysing the results claims the line between gaming and gambling has become blurred.
We have evidence that the very design of loot box openings in games borrows techniques directly from regulated gambling, and it shows you near misses. So when we spoke to young people about this, they told us that it often makes them want to try again, so maybe they have the chance next time to get the item that they really want.
Games developers dispute the link with gambling and say they do have existing safeguards to limit spending. One industry expert says the financial model of loot boxes is very lucrative, raking in around £10 billion last year alone.
Ultimately it boils down to revenue. More and more developers are leaning towards changing from standalone products with no financial updates to games as a service, unlocking more and more content with a steady stream of chance-based game mechanics which players have to purchase.
Well, the Department for Culture, Media and Sport ran its own consultation on loot boxes, and a spokesperson told ITV News it's due to publish a response in the coming months. And those who've spent huge sums of money on them and later regretted it will be hoping our lawmakers can put much stricter rules in place on their use. Nick Smith, ITV News.
Next tonight, a researcher from Canterbury who was born with a condition which affects her face has described what it's like to be stared at as she walks around the town.
Amanda Bates spoke to us in support of the charity Changing Faces Stop the Stare campaign for Faces Equality Week. Sarah Saunders has been to meet her.
Most of the time when I'm out in public, I will be stared at least once.
Amanda Bates was born with an inherited condition, which gave her a cleft lip and palate. She has missing fingers, clubbed feet and limited vision in one eye. Despite many painful surgeries as a child, she was outgoing and confident in primary school. But eventually she noticed some strangers would stare.
I've always had the mindset that I'm just going to live my life and try not to be too impacted by other people's behaviour, but I do know that when someone stares at me, it's a really icy, hostile experience. When we were all wearing masks, and I know a lot of people still are, that was the first time in my life I understood what it was like to be anonymous. That was a real revelation, actually.
Research by the charity Changing Faces shows an increase in the number of people experiencing hostile behaviour because of their visible difference. They've launched a campaign called Stop the Stare.
Stop. Just stop. Please stop. Why do you think that it's okay? Stop staring. Every day people stop and stare simply because of how I look. It is not okay.
One of the things that we think is happening is that people are perhaps have an element of surprise when they see somebody who looks different. And that's maybe because the representation within common types of media, film, TV, they're not seeing the wide range and diversity of types of people that actually exists in society.
I now feel very positive about the way that I look and my identity, and I wouldn't change it because then I wouldn't be me. Because I don't want to have to change just so that when I'm walking down the street maybe less people will stare.
A call to stop staring but also accept and embrace our individual differences. Sarah Saunders, ITV News, Canterbury.
Now the ITV News continues with the national and international headlines at 6:30. With the details for us, here's Charlene White.
The Prime Minister says he won't block names being published in Sue Gray's report into government parties during lockdown. Boris Johnson says he's looking forward to seeing its contents pretty soon. It could lead to tragedy, the warning from one Premier League manager after another violent pitch invasion. And 38 towns applied, but only 8 have been crowned cities. We'll tell you why and where. So join us for those stories and so much more from 6:30. Now the story we've all been waiting for, because some see them as lovable characters, others think they're a bit tacky and old-fashioned.
Yes, garden gnomes have always divided opinion. Now it seems they're also dividing the generations. Research shows those over 65 are shunning them, but they're gaining popularity among younger... I'm trying to build up the drama here. Among younger age groups. I am. This is tense.
Can't wait.
Here's Lauren Hall.
Sometimes they raise a smile. Other times, they're more likely to raise a few eyebrows. It's fair to say we have a bit of a love-hate relationship with garden gnomes. Among their fans are Chris and Lorna Cerner. They've allowed them to take over their garden centre, and it's thought to be one of the largest collections in the world.
In the garden itself, at the moment, we have around 1,500 gnomes, and still to be restored, another 1,000 gnomes. They have always got a smile on their face, and they are happy little people.
No doubt they're even happier when they're restored to their former glory.
It's just nice to be able to sit down and do a bit of painting, really. I mean, some people do watercolours, other people paint gnomes, I suppose. And it's the sort of thing that you do just to keep the garden looking smart, really. I mean, you wouldn't want a gnome in the garden with all the paint peeling off, would you?
Well, some wouldn't want a gnome in their garden at all. A recent survey found more than half those over the age of 65 consider them outdated. Although they're perhaps proving popular with the younger generation. The hashtag Garden Gnome gained nearly 17.5 million views on TikTok last year. It's a trend they're noticing at this garden centre in Newhaven in Sussex.
I'd certainly say that the demand for garden gnomes has increased in recent times, certainly more amongst our younger customers than our older customers. They ebb and flow in their popularity, and where one generation might see something as tacky, another generation may see it as a delightful addition to their garden. And I think the gnomes have had their difficult period, but they're now back on the rise with a new generation who want a fun and exciting character in their garden.
Those who are well read will know that placing stone figures in gardens is an ancient tradition. Although gnomes, as we know them, started appearing in the Victorian era, and their popularity has been up and down over the decades.
The name gnome is thought to derive from the Greek word ienomos, that means earth dweller. Mythological beings who were used to protect crops, gardens and keep evil spirits away. Now today there's estimated 5 million garden gnomes in Britain, and they are gaining popularity thanks to movies like Gnomeo and Juliet and Sherlock Gnomes. So whether you're a fan of gnomes or not, there's gnome denying they have history.
They certainly do. Love them or loathe them, they're still a common sight. Just don't expect to see any at the upcoming Chelsea Flower Show, where garden gnomes have been banned for many years. Lauren Hall, ITV News.
And at Chelsea, they don't know what they're missing. Are you a gnome fan?
I'm not against gnomes.
No.
We have fairies in our garden, like a little fairy house, little door in the tree, so I think maybe they wouldn't get on, so I don't have any gnomes. But whatever you think of them, they're certainly a talking point, and loads of comments about gnomes on our Facebook page today. The more comments than we've had about anything else this week, to be honest. Sue Judd from Chatham sent us pictures of her 8 gnomes, large as they are, 4 medium ones, 6 small ones.
What a collection.
Sue says she's no good at gardening, so they add colour to her garden. Very nice.
You certainly do. And Geraldine Urie from Newhaven says she's only has a couple so far because she's just started collecting them, but they are cute, aren't they? Those, look.
You've got a way to go, though, to beat Margaret Kirk's collection. She has 60 in total, indoors, outdoors, everywhere. Margaret says the 2 big ones are her favourites.
And Mark Palmer sent us a picture of this very rude gnome, which we had to edit before showing you. I think you can guess what he's doing. And Mark says he bought this gnome about 40 years ago and he's still going strong. Just some minor repairs and a few coats of paint every now and again. Look at him, he's very cheeky.
Dread to think. Some other comments as well. Sheila Mail says they are awful things to have in the garden, not a fan.
No, and Trixie Lewis says she loves them and all of her gnomes have names.
Gwen Stewart, though, says they give her the creeps. Short and sweet message, this one. But thank you to everybody who took the time to get in touch.
And they certainly want to talk about gnomes,
They
don't
do.
they? And we're staying with a gardening theme because Holly joins us. Holly, it's World Bee Day.
That's right. So it's a day to celebrate all things bee because they are absolutely vital. So 80% of the world's plants need some sort of animal pollination. That's mostly bees. Take them out of the equation and basically the ecosystem collapses. Wow. They face so many challenges: climate change, pests and diseases, invasive species, pesticides, and probably the biggest one is the loss of habitat. So since the 1930s, guess how much land we've lost of our wildflower meadows? How much do you think?
As a percentage?
Yeah.
50%.
97%,
No.
so about an area the size of Wales. So bees facing massive problems and humans mostly to blame. Few photos just to tell you about the different types of bees we have in the UK. The most common one we see is the honeybee, that's domestically kept. Faces many challenges, but not in the same way as our wild bees. So bumblebees, that's your wild bees. So these, again, are social bees. They live in colonies, facing an awful lot of those threats. And then we've got 250 species, would you believe it, of solitary bee, like this one from Colin Lee. They live on their own in little holes in the ground or in bee hotels that people put up in their gardens. And again, these are all facing huge, huge threats. The best thing we can do is get planting flowers. And I'd say to people, please send me your photos before and after through the summer of how you're helping the bees.
Fantastic. Some great pictures there as well already. Keep sending them in. Right, let's get a check on the full forecast. Here's Holly, of course.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
A soggy start for many of us this morning before skies brightened, and I think we should have some bright weather actually for this weekend. Spells of sunshine, a lot of dry weather in general, temperatures rising, tomorrow warmer than today, Sunday warmer than tomorrow. Tomorrow night could bring a little mist and fog. Sunday night a small chance of thundery showers, but I do think it is a fairly small risk at this stage. So this is the feature that affected us this morning. Now we've got high pressure to the south, and that's just about keeping us settled as we push through the weekend. But if we zoom in to look at the detail at the moment, a few showers perhaps still lurking. We've got this southwesterly breeze. The showers tend to die away into the night tonight, and with starry skies overhead, it does turn a bit chilly, I think, for the time of year. These are typical values, but you could get a little lower out in the countryside in particular. So into our Saturday, well, I think cloud will drift in and out, but overall a bright day, some nice spells of sunshine. Still this southwesterly breeze, so it will always feel fresher into that south coast where you've got the breeze coming in off the sea, but temperatures higher than today. I think inland we're talking high teens, possibly 20 degrees for some. Then you could catch a little mist and fog into Saturday night. For Sunday, temperatures rising a little, again some nice spells of sunshine, a lot of dry weather around. That small chance of thundery showers perhaps as we head into Sunday night, but I do think it is a fairly small risk, but on the unsettled side into next week.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Hello, summer. Piri sponsors ITV Pollen Count.
Tree pollen is on the wane at the moment, and although grass pollen is on the rise and we've got a decent look to the weather for this weekend, actually levels should remain low into the coming days. Have a lovely one.
So a decent weekend in store, just the weather to buy a gnome. And just a moment, the ITV Evening News with Charlene White.
Or not, whatever's your preference. You do your own thing. That's it. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Good night.